Hello class, Dr. Nemechek here again. Welcome to week 2 of Healthcare Finance. This week we're going to go into 4 chapters in the book that have to deal with recording financial operations, and that's the title of part 2 in the text, where they're going to talk about assets, liabilities, and net worth, revenues, expenses, and cost classifications. And those terms should resonate with you because those are right out of Accounting 101 and 102. Where you have to be familiar with the terminology of generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. So your assignments this week are to read those 4 chapters, review the PowerPoints that I've embedded in the course for you, for each one for chapters 4 through 7, participate in the week 2 discussion board, complete the week 2 assignment, and you do have another quiz this week. So when you get a chance, you can take a look at what you want to do first, but obviously the starting point is to read the book. Now, when looking at chapter 4, I'd like to point out to you that each one of these chapters, 4 through 7, are very short, very concise. Chapter 4 that starts on page 33 in your textbook actually is only 4 pages long, about 3.5 pages actually. And they're going to remind you of the definitions of what is an asset, what is a liability, what is net worth, and the 3-part equation, which is assets equals liabilities plus net worth, which you may remember from your Accounting 101 days. And then they're going to demonstrate some examples for you, talk about short-term versus long-term assets. Same thing with liabilities. They're going to define it again and go into what is short-term versus long-term, and then the different types of net worth that you need to be familiar with. There's some good information checkpoints at the end of the chapter on page 36. Key terms for you to become familiar with, as well as the discussion boards, discussion questions at the end of the chapter, which will help you with your discussion board when you get to that point. Same thing with chapter 5. This one's going to deal with revenues. This is a very short chapter. It is, well, actually, of the 4 you're doing, this is probably the longest. It's about 6 pages long. And they're going to give you an overview of how to understand how receiving revenue for services is a revenue stream. In other words, when people pay you money, that's how you're bringing money into the organization for selling products, goods, and services that you are offering up to the patient population. So they're going to go over the concept of how receiving those monies for services constitutes what's called a revenue stream. They're going to talk about contractual allowances and discounts and the impact that they can have on that money that's coming into the organization. They're going to talk about the differences in sources of healthcare revenue. In other words, where your payment's coming from, and that conversation starts at the bottom of page 39, where they introduce you to government sources such as the Medicare program, the Medicaid program, other programs like CHIP, managed care sources, types of insurance plans. All that information will be discussed just briefly. Then they're going to remind you about what cost centers are. And that's probably a pretty interesting discussion if you haven't explored that type of information, because they'll show you how to plan and control by setting up revenue centers and care cost settings in a hospital or a long-term care facility or a home care facility. And they'll show you how it's done in physician groups, etc. So that might be very valuable information for you. Again, at the end of chapter 5, you have an information check point that will help you to understand the chapter after you read it, the key terms that you must understand, and discussion questions, again, that will help you in answering your discussion board question this week. Chapter 6 has to do with outflows. In other words, money that is leaving the organization, and that typically referred to as expenses, but there are different types. They'll try to give you an understanding of the difference between an expense and a cost, how disbursements for services represent an expense stream or an outflow, how expenses are grouped in different ways for planning and control of the organization, and why cost reports have influenced expense formats. Again, this particular chapter is relatively brief. It looks like it's about 5.5, 6 pages long. And again, don't commit yourself to memorizing all of the graphs and exhibits that they've got in here. They're just giving you a bunch of examples of what things might look like. But more importantly, take a look at the key terms and the discussion questions, and study the checkpoint, information checkpoint at the end of the chapter, which gives you a much better understanding to bring that information full circle. And last but not least, Chapter 7 are cost classifications. This is where you have to understand and be able to distinguish between what a direct cost is and an indirect cost. To simplify that for you, a direct cost can be specifically associated with a particular unit or department or patient. The critical distinction for the manager is that the cost is directly attributable to something. Whatever the manager is responsible for, that is the unit or the department or the patient, is known as a cost object. And if that is a direct opposite of what an indirect cost is, and so in contrast, an indirect cost is something that's incurred over the operation of over the course of the operation, and not for any one given unit. It's things that affect the entire cost of running an organization. So they're going to go over cost classifications and make sure that you understand those definitions, and also portray for you why the difference is important to management. You be the potential management of the future. You should be able to understand the composition and purpose of responsibility centers and be able to distinguish between product and period costs. And again, don't get wrapped around the axle on the exhibits and the examples that you give you in this chapter. It's relatively short, again, about 4 pages. Hone in, though, after you read it on the information checklist to see if you can answer those questions. Try to, in your own mind, understand the key terms that are listed and, of course, the discussion questions that bring the whole chapter, again, full circle for you and will help you to answer this week's discussion board, as well as all the things that you've got to do. So that is your introduction to week 2. Again, this is probably, for many of you who have had accounting 101 and not 102 not too long ago in your bachelor's level programs, this will be kind of a review of what those accounting terminologies are all about. So if you have any luck, if you don't have any luck understanding of this information, you know how to get in touch with me, and I'll be standing by to assist you. If not, I'll be interested in seeing what you're posting for the week, and I'll be watching that closely, and I'll begin grading starting today, Thursday, the start of class, the information that you did in work 1 and submit it as your work. So you can begin looking for those grades probably by no later than Saturday or Sunday. Hope you have a good week. If you need to get in touch with me, give me a call or send me an email. See you then. Bye.